Rav Avi, do you want to start?
Okay, I'm on. Okay.
You're on. Okay.
Okay, welcome. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Okay, so this shiur, this course, will deal with the temple as a place of worship for Jews and non-Jews. Especially, I'll try to focus on korbanot, on sacrifices. But I'll say before I begin, I'll say I feel that we're now at a time when the whole world, Jews and non-Jews, were all in a situation of crisis, and I pray that the shiur will be the shiur will be for the zchut of the whole world, to bring refuah, to bring comfort to the world, to all people, all over the place. Okay, so we'll start. I'll begin with sort of the obvious. Okay, the obvious is we all know the psukim in Yeshayahu about goyim being invited to be part of the worship on the Temple Mount in Beit HaMikdash. Ki beiti beit tefila yikared lechol ha'amim. והביותים, איפה פסוק והביותים אל הר קודשי ושימחתים בבית תפילתי עולותיהם וזבחיהם לרצון על מזבחי. Okay, meaning that their sacrifices, their olot, their zvachim, the korbanot that the goyim will bring, leratzon al mizbechi, they will be accepted willingly on the mizbeach in Beit HaMikdash. Okay, and clearly this pasuk, these pasukim in Yeshayahu, are in a sense also sending us back, or almost quoting the tefillah of Shlomo when he built Beit HaMikdash, where Shlomo HaMelech prays that the prayers of all the goyim will reach Hashem through Beit HaMikdash. Is really the idea that was there at the outset when Beit HaMikdash was first built by Shlomo HaMelech. The idea was that it would be a place, the center of tefillah for goyim all over the world. We also know, another thing which I would say is sort of like the obvious, we also know that all through Tanakh, we find non-Jews bringing korbanot, beginning from Cain and Hevel, right? Both of them bring korbanot. Noach brings korban after the Mabul. Yitro, when he comes and he meets Moshe Rabbeinu and all of Am Yisrael, so also he brings korbanot, and he brings them together with the zkenim. We know the sailors of Yonah, after they throw him into the sea and the sea comes down, so they also bring korbanot. Okay, so all over Tanakh we have non-Jews bringing korban. In some of the cases we have interesting insights, like in the case of Yitro, for example, Yitro brings the korban, and it's done together with the Jews, together with the zkenim. They eat the korbanot together. In the case of Cain and Hevel, for example, we see that Hashem not only accepts the korban, but also he's really very exacting, where he demands a certain type of a korban. That's why he prefers the korban of Hevel over against the korban of Cain. So the issue of korbanot, of goyim, is certainly, it's there, and it's something which has more depth to it than simply, okay, if they brought the korban, so we'll accept it. There's more to it than just that. Okay, so I would suggest the question I would like to look into is not only whether Hashem accepts willingly the korbanot from non-Jews, but also, I would say, do we accept the korbanot willingly? In other words, does halakha do that? In other words, the fact that the stories in Tanakh have goyim bringing korbanot, and Hashem accepts those korbanot, okay, what does halakha have to say about that? In other words, the stories are part of the issue, but what happens in terms of the psukim of halachot of korbanot in the Tanakh? Does halakha allow us to accept korbanot from goyim? A goy A non-Jew brings the korban to Beit HaMikdash, or sends the korban to Beit HaMikdash. How's that received? How's that accepted? Okay, so that's what I would like to look into in this shiur. Okay, so I'm focusing, I'll say it's a double focus. Okay, it's specifically on korbanot, and more specifically, it's about not whether it happens in history or in Tanakh that a goy will bring a korban, but halachically, how is such a korban accepted within the system, the regular system of kodshim of korbanot? How does it work? Okay, so now in the shiur itself, so part of the shiur will deal with psukim and sources of halacha, and part of it will deal with agaditot, okay, stories in the Gemara, mainly two pretty well-known agaditot, two well-known stories, which I think show us two aspects of this issue. Okay, we'll begin with the psukim. Okay, do you have the source sheet in front of you? Does it send? Tzipora? Did it reach everybody? Okay, okay, the send. Okay, so the first psukim that I'm bringing here, the source number one, are the psukim in Sefer Shemot, which deal with Korban Pesach. Okay, the psukim of Korban Pesach. These psukim deal not only with Korban Pesach of what we call Pesach Mitzrayim, the Korban Pesach which was brought when they left Egypt, but it's dealing with Korban Pesach for years to come, for generations to come, what we call Pesach Dorot, okay, Korban Pesach in all the generations in the future. All of Korbanot Pesach have to follow these rules, okay, and the psukim say as follows: Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'Aaron, zot chukat haPesach, kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. The first rule, okay, that's given as chukat haPesach, the rule, the chok of the Korban Pesach, is that a non-Jew cannot participate in Korban Pesach, cannot eat from the Korban Pesach. Okay, then we have an exception. B'chol eved ish miknat kesef, but if he's your slave, umalta oto, and he is circumcised, as yochal bo, then he can. In a sense, he joined the nation. Okay, but on the other hand, toshav v'sachir lo yochal bo, someone who's not a slave, simply he lives with you, he's even employed by you, but he's not really a slave, so he can't participate in Korban Pesach. And then again, kol adat Yisrael yasur, so the whole nation will bring the Korban Pesach, so it's clearly a national issue, Korban Pesach. And then we have the exception of the ger. Okay, so we have the slave, and now we have the ger as well. And he wants to bring Korban Pesach, he wants to participate. So how can that be done? Again, he must be circumcised. Then he becomes like one of the citizens. Okay, so there is a message of equality, right? Torah achat yeh la'ezrach v'lager hagar betochechem. But a non-Jew, someone who's not a Jew and is not a slave of a Jew, certainly cannot participate. Kol ben nechar lo yochal. Okay, now this is the first korban that we meet in terms of the halachic text of the Torah. We meet Korban Pesach, and it seems that this is the first korban we meet. It's the birth of the nation. Okay, and the Torah stresses very forcefully the exclusion of goyim. Okay, so that's like one point to start out from. But as we shall see, this exclusion of goyim remains unique to Korban Pesach. Okay, with all other korbanot, that is not the case. Okay, so we have Korban Pesach, which is very basic and stressed very strongly, but all other korbanot work otherwise. Okay. Now before we go on to other korbanot, I want to see the Meshech Chochmah together with you because it's very interesting, not only regarding the issue of korbanot of non-Jews, but also for other issues as well. But before I go on, I want to make sure, like, you feel free to ask questions. Okay, since it's on Zoom, so it's more difficult for me to feel like what's happening with you. Okay, so simply break it whenever you have a question if something is not clear. Okay, there's a very interesting Meshech Chochmah on the psukim that we just read. Okay, specifically on the pasuk which said, "Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo," a non-Jew cannot eat from the Korban Pesach. The Meshech Chochmah one of the Mepharshim on these psukim says the following. First of all, he brings the Onkelos, the translation of the Onkelos. He says, Kol benecha lo yochal bo. It's the source number 2. Okay, Onkelos tirgem, kefi hamidrash. Okay, Onkelos translates it according to the Medrash. Kol bar Israel deishtamed. Okay, benecha doesn't mean a non-Jew, which is the way I interpreted it up to now. Rather, it means a Jew who went out to Shema. Okay, he left the Jewish religion, belief, faith, whatever. Okay, he became like a goy. Okay, Yehudi sheishtamed, Bar Israel sheishtamed. That is what we're talking about here. Okay, now, why? First of all, that's a very powerful targum. Okay, it's painful to read. Okay, right? We're entering the idea of Korban Pesach, something which is so basic to the identity, our identity as a nation, and we know, right? Keneged arba'a banim dibra Torah. Even the Rasha is part of the Korban of the Seder night. Okay, but nevertheless, there is a red line that if you cross that, then you're outside. Okay, okay. Now, why did the Medrash explain it this way? Why did Onkelos translate it this way? So here's the interesting thing. The Meshech Chochmah says, "Mishum she'apshat lo yitachen." In other words, the literal meaning of the words is impossible. What's the literal meaning of the words is the way I explained it beforehand, that a non-Jew cannot eat Korban Pesach. Why is that impossible? Apshat lo yitachen. Why? The almi kaya isur. Who is this prohibition relating to? Who is the Torah speaking to when it says Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo? Im al Israel, if it's turning to the Jew and telling the Jew you're not allowed to feed a goy from your Korban Pesach, Im al Israel ha'ma'achil leben nechar, Moshe katav Rambam, that doesn't fit the words. It should have written, the Torah should have said, Lo ya'achil leben nechar, you should not feed. Not that he should not eat, but rather you should not feed him. Okay, who else could the prohibition be relating to? Could the Isur be talking about? Ve'im al ben nechar atzmo, and if it's towards the non-Jew himself, halo eino tachat hadat sheteheh ha'azhara alav. The Torah doesn't relate in any way to non-Jews. The Torah doesn't say anything to them. It doesn't command them in any way. So the Torah could not prohibit anything to the goyim. How could the Torah say Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo if, to begin with, non-Jews are not part of the story at all? Okay, since the Torah does not relate to them at all. So that's why the pasuk could not mean what it seems to mean in terms of the pshat. Okay, there's a prohibition on goyim eating from Korban Pesach simply because goyim are not part of the dialogue, which is what the Torah is all about. Okay, shahadat medaber el Israel, since the dat here I think means sort of the law. Okay, the laws of the Torah relate to Jews and not to goyim at all. Okay, so you see that here, I would say the issue seems to be, I think, not whether Hashem will accept the korban, but whether halacha allows us to accept the korban. And the halacha relates only to Jews and not the non-Jews. Therefore, it could not be a commandment on the non-Jew at all. This is an interesting, I think, in this interesting insight in terms of the way the Torah relates to non-Jews at all, in general. Okay, the assumption is that at least the chukim of the Torah, the laws of the Torah, only relate to Jews. That immediately brings up the question of what would we say about Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach. We know that there are psukim in the Torah, which seems to be the source for commanding non-Jews as well. And at least these psukim, which clearly are part of the Torah, which is not Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach, okay, relate to Jews only and not to non-Jews. If you don't relate to them, you can't place a prohibition upon them either. Okay, so therefore the pasuk has to mean something slightly different. Okay, so in a way, the Meshech Chochmah narrows down our inquiry, okay, into the issue of whether Jews can accept korbanot from goyim or not. Okay, that is the issue. Okay, now I'll leave these psukim of Korban Pesach, and I'll move on to other korbanot. Okay, so Korban Pesach we say, no, Goyim cannot bring the Korban Pesach. They cannot participate. What about other Korbanot? So here we have other psukim. The other psukim are in Sefer Vayikra. The context of these psukim is Korbanot which have mumim, deformities. Okay, Korban which has a mum, which isn't perfect, cannot be brought as a Korban to Hashem, to Beit HaMikdash, on the Mizbeach. Okay, and the psukim give a long list. I didn't bring the full list of the mumim. Okay, but we have a list of mumim from which you cannot bring a korban. Okay, we'll read the psukim inside. Okay, it's source number 3. דבר אל אהרון ואל בניו ואל כל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם איש איש מבית ישראל ומן הגר בישראל. Okay, anyone, any person from Am Yisrael or from the Gerim. Okay, so it's narrowed down to Jews and Gerim. אשר יקריב קורבנו לכל נדריהם ולכל נדבותם אשר יקריבו להשם לעולם. Any korban that you bring, and later on it's brought into also to korban shlamim as well. Okay, anyone who brings a korban, lirtzonechem, tamim zachar. It must be a perfect korban with no deformity, tamim, בבקר, בכספים ובעיזים, כל אשר בו מום, anything which has an imperfection in it, לא תקריבו, cannot be sacrificed. כי לא לרצון יהיה לכם, will not be accepted willingly. Okay, the same תמים as well, אבל לנדר או לנדבה בבקר או בצון, again, תמים יהיה לרצון. כל מום לא יהיה. The list of the mumim is given, and I'm skipping to Pasuk Kafei, ומייד בן אחד, from a non-Jew, מיד בן אחד, לא תקריבו את לחם אלוקיכם. You must not sacrifice your the food, the bread for Hashem. מכל אלה, from any of these. Okay, what are these? Mikol ele, and seem to be from a non-Jew. But when you read it more closely, so clearly it means that you don't accept a korban from a non-Jew if it has a mum, if it has a deformity. In other words, the psukim, although they seem to be separating between a korban of a Jew and a korban of a non-Jew, but read more closely, the psukim really are saying that not only do you not accept a korban with the blemish from a Jew, you don't accept such a korban from a non-Jew as well. So the real meaning of these psukim is to create an equality between Jews and non-Jews regarding korbanot, besides korban Pesach. Okay, korban Pesach we know that we do not accept from Goyim, but other korbanot, it seems that we do accept them, and not only do we accept them, but we have the requirements. The demand that we make upon Goyim are just as exacting, just as severe as we have from Jews as well. Okay. Okay. So these are the psukim in Vayikra. I want to see together with you some of the mefarshim who stress the point that I just made. Okay. Rashi, for example, said, source number 4. Rashi says, "Miyad benecha from a non-Jew, nochri shehevi korban, a non-Jew who brings the korban biyad kohen, and he gives the korban to the kohen to sacrifice it, lakrivo lashamayim, to sacrifice it to Hashem. Lo takrivu lo ba'al mum, don't sacrifice for him a korban which has a mum, a deformity. Aval tmima tekablu mehem, but a perfect korban you certainly can accept from goyim. Lekach ne'emar lemala. That's why it says in the psukim at the beginning of this parasha, ish ish, any person. L'rabot, that comes to include, not to exclude. It comes to include et hanochrim, even goyim, shenodrim nedarim unedavot Yisrael, since they can really take upon themselves and actually bring korbanot, just like Jews can. Now, this is very interesting drasha because the full pasuk ish ish said ish mi beit Israel, any person from the nation of from Am Israel, right? But he takes it the double word ish to come to include lerabot, to add on goyim as well. Okay, so Rashi goes in this direction. Okay, the same holds source number 5. Okay, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Damar Rabbi Elazar, Minayin lemuchusar evar de'asur lebnei Noach. How do we know that Bnei Noach cannot bring a korban which is missing a limb? Okay, which is missing a whole limb. D'chtiv mikol achai mikol basar shnayim mikol v'chulei. Amra Torah. The Torah says here, Haveh behema, you must bring an animal shechayim rashei evarim shela, that all of the limbs are live, are full. Okay, only a full behema can be brought as a korban, even by a ben noach. Okay, so here goyim also can bring korbanot, and their korbanot also must be perfect. Okay, the one who says it even the most clear way, I think, is Ibn Ezra in source number 6. He says, "Miyad benechar." That's the pasuk we just read, right? Miyad benechar lo takrivu mikol ele. Right? You cannot bring a korban from a goy which has a mum in it. So the Ibn Ezra says, "Shelo yachshov belibo." You mustn't think. In other words, the kohen, the Jew, must not think, "Ho'il v'hu korban benechar," that since this sacrifice comes from a benechar, from a non-Jew, lo achush leakrivo. So it wouldn't bother me to bring it as a korban. Who cares if it has a mum? So what if it has this imperfection? It's only for a goy, so I don't have to be so. It doesn't have to be so perfect. It's not for a Jew. No, for goyim also, the korban has to be a perfect korban. Okay, so here I think that Ibn Ezra is hinting to the idea that these psukim demand or require from a goyim to bring a korban which is perfect, just as we require it from a Jew. This is creating some sort of inequality. Okay, not to have the same requirements on a non-Jew would really, in a way, be saying that we don't respect the korbanot from goyim, just like we respect the korbanot from Jews. Okay, and the equal requirements really express an equal respect to a korban from a Jew and a korban from a goy. Okay, so up to now, what did we see in terms of the halachic sources in the psukim themselves? We see that Korban Pesach, a goy cannot participate in. Presumably, if we want to go deeper into that, we would say, okay, Korban Pesach has to do with our identity as a nation. Okay, any Jew who brings the Korban is really realizing his zchut, his right to be part of the nation. It's almost like a identity card. Okay, once a year I bring a Korban Pesach. I'm part of this. I'm part of this Geulah. I'm part of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That is specifically a Jewish issue. It's only for Jews. All other korbanot can be brought by goyim as well. The goyim can bring korbanot. Not only that, but if their korbanot are brought to Beit HaMikdash, so the requirements from these korbanot are equal to the requirements of korbanot from Jews as well. Okay? Up to now. Ad kan. Seder? Okay. Okay, now, the interesting thing is that we have two Agaditot, two stories in Chazal. I think both of them are pretty well known. One is certainly the story of Kamta and Bal Kamta is extremely well known. Okay, and the other is maybe a bit less so. So we'll learn both of them. And in both of these, one of the stories has to do with Korban Pesach, and one of them has to do with Korbanot in general, okay, at large. And I think these two stories, which are really parallel, okay, there are a lot of similar issues that come up in both of these stories, are also working, sort of playing out the two sets of psukim that we just saw. Okay, the psukim of Korban Pesach and the psukim of Korbanot Bichlal. Now, both of these stories are halachic stories. In other words, they're both about Beit HaMikdash and Jews in terms of halacha. Okay, who are keeping the halacha, and how do they deal with korbanot, with participation of non-Jews in the korbanot brought to Beit HaMikdash. Okay, that's the issue of both of these stories. We'll start with the story in the Gemara in Pesachim, source number 8. Okay, the story, both of the stories here are Aramaic, okay, in Aramaic, so I'll translate as I go along. I hope it will be okay. Okay, so the Gemara in Pesachim gives the following story. Haru Arba'a, there was a non-Jew, Dehava Salik, he used to make the Aliyah L'Regel. He would come to Yerushalayim from, as we'll see later, he lived in a place on the border between Syria and Turkey nowadays, okay, in a place called Netzivin. Okay, so this non-Jew, he used to come every year from Netzivin. He used to be Olel HaRegel with all the Jews, have a sadiq, ve'achil psachim b'Yerushalayim, and he would eat from the Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim, okay, transgressing the prohibition of Kol Ben Echal Lo Yochal Bo, right? He would come and eat Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim together with all the Jews. Amar, and he would go around saying, probably like boasting, bragging, Amar, Ktiv, it says in the pasuk, in your Torah, the Torah says, Kol Ben Echal Lo Yochal Bo, Kol Arei Lo Yochal Bo, right? So I'm not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. Ve'ana, and I, Ka'achilna, and here I am. I'm going to Yerushalayim, and I'm able to eat mishufrei shufrei, from the choices, from the best parts of the Korban. I feast on the Korban Pesach of the Jews, and I don't care about these psukim. Okay. Now, clearly, from the continuation of the story, it's clear that he would go around saying this. Obviously, not in Yerushalayim. Okay, in Yerushalayim, he appeared as a Jew. But when he went back to his hometown, okay, in Netzivin, far away from Yerushalayim, he would go around boasting in this way, okay, and presumably he would go around saying this to the Jews. Okay, he was pestering the Jews. Like he would say to the Jews, look, it's not only a financial issue, okay, that I'm getting meat without paying, okay, or that I'm getting the best parts of it. So like it's a gluttony, okay. It's also an issue of national or religious pride, like, right, Korban Pesach should be only for Jews, and I'm able to, yet you have no way of controlling this. You've lost control over the temple, over Beit HaMikdash, okay? I assume that when he's saying this to Jews in Netzivin, in a way he's also saying to them, look how far you are from Beit HaMikdash, right? Here, I'm here telling you this story, that I'm doing this in Yerushalayim, and you have no way to stop me, right? You have no way to stop me. I assume that a Jew in Netzivin, hearing this guy boasting in this way, he would feel very hurt by this. Okay? And he would say, if only I could in some way pass the message to Yerushalayim to stop this person. Okay, but there's no way, right? There's this gap of information. Once he reaches Yerushalayim, I'm not able, as a Jew from Netzivin, I have no way of following him to Yerushalayim, or tracking him down. There's no one stamps your passport to enter Yerushalayim and bring a Korban Pesach. Anyone who comes as a Jew will be accepted. Okay, that's the issue. So clearly, it's clear from the story. Okay, this guy, this non-Jew, he knew these psukim. Okay, he knew the issue that it was only for Jews, and he enjoyed pestering the Jews in this way. Okay. Now, one of the Jews living in Netzivin was Rabbi Yehuda ben Betecha. Okay, this whole story is happening in the time of the Tamim. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Betecha, he was a neighbor of this non-Jew. Okay, and he heard the non-Jew saying all of this. Okay, what could he do? What could he do? So Rabbi Yehuda ben Betecha created a sort of a trap for this non-Jew. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda ben Betecha. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Betecha said to this non-Jew, Mi kasafu lecha me'aliyah? Did they feed you? Did they give you from the aliyah as well? What is the aliyah? The aliyah is the fatty part of the tail of the sheep, okay, of the Korban Pesach as well. Okay, any Korban Pesach has an aliyah. That's part of the Korban. It's part of the meat, the flesh of the Korban. Now, the aliyah is considered very tasty. It's a fatty part of the Korban, but any Jew knows that you're not allowed to eat the aliyah. The aliyah is part of what you're supposed to burn on the mizbeach. You're not allowed to eat it. Okay, so if the whole issue was the issue of you're wanting to fill your stomach with the best tasting meat, so you would obviously demand the aliyah, okay? If your issue is religious, sincere, a religious issue of bringing a korban, so obviously you do not want to ask for the aliyah. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is tempting the goy. Okay, he's saying to the goy, he's making fun of him. He's saying, okay, you think they're giving you the best part? No, they're only giving you the best part that no one is giving you. Okay, and that is the aliyah. Okay, now Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera knows, as any Jew knows, that the reason he's not getting it is because no Jew can get it because it's brought on the mizbeach. Okay, but the non-Jew thinks that he's being gypped. Okay, and he wants to prove, now next time he'll go to Yerushalayim, he wants to prove to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, okay, that he knows better. Okay, now that is the trap. That is the trap. Let's see how the story unravels. Okay, Amar le lo. So the non-Jew says to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, no, they never gave me the aliyah. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera says to him, Kisalkat lehatam, when you, next time you go there, okay, next year, when you go to eat your Korban Pesach, say to them, Safuli me'aliyah, give me the aliyah, why don't you give me that part as well? Okay, so, and he fell into the trap. Okay, Kisalik, when he came to Yerushalayim the year after, Amar lehu, so he said to them, me'aliyah sfuli, feed me from the aliyah. So they said to him, aliyah legavoa salka. Wait, but the aliyah goes to the mizbeach. How can you be asking for the aliyah? Now it seems the first response they gave to him was sort of taking his words at face value. Sort of they didn't really realize the trap. Okay, they first of all they said no, you couldn't be asking for the aliyah because the aliyah goes not to the mizbeach. But then they sort of said to themselves, wait a moment, how could it be? How could there be a Jew asking for the aliyah? This couldn't be. It's impossible. Okay, and then they said to him, who told you so? Who told you to ask for the aliyah? In other words, they realized that there's a secret message being sent to them through this question by the non-Jew. And here, that is where the trap is. Okay, he said to them, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. So he said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, he's the one who told me to ask for the aliyah. Okay, now he's revealing that in fact the question really was inserted artificially by Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, and presumably it was a message from one wise Jew in Netzivim to the wise Jews in Yerushalayim to catch this non-Jew who's taking advantage, okay, of his being able to filter in and pose as a Jew. They said to each other, what is this in front of us? Who is this person? What's going on here? But and then they began checking after him and looking into his ancestry. But and they found out that he's really a non-Jew. And then they killed him. Okay, it was a capital punishment for eating Korban Pesach all these years. I don't know if this is actually possible. This is really the halachic punishment. I'm not positive, but in any case, obviously they wouldn't let this go on. Okay, the main issue here is not that punishment that he received, but the ability of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera using without any communication system. Okay, there's no way he can send a message to the Jews in Yerushalayim, but he had the insight. Okay, the ability to penetrate sort of the psychology of this non-Jew and how he can use his gluttony and his boasting. Okay, how he can use it against him and create a trap for him, which will in a way he will regain control over the purity of the korbanot in Yerushalayim. And that is the message they sent. They then sent to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. Shalchu Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, the wise people from Yerushalayim, sent a message to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. They sent him the following message: Shalom lecha, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, peace upon you. Okay, or possibly maybe even shlemut, perfection. Okay, shalom lecha Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, de'at benetzivim, that you live in Netzivim, umetzudatcha prusa b'Yerushalayim, and you're able to place your trap, okay, all the way to Yerushalayim. Now, Metzudah has sort of a double meaning. The word Metzudah means a fortress, okay, which relates in a way metaphorically to Yerushalayim. Okay, it's a fortress which sort of protects Yerushalayim. But the word Metzudah in the language of the Chachamim also means a trap. Okay, so you were able to create a trap which is also a Haganah. It's also a protection of Yerushalayim from Goyim who try to enter and defile the Korban Pesach. Okay, this is one story the Chachamim tell us. Okay, and again, it's about Korban Pesach, which is intended only for Jews. The difficulty that Jews might face in protecting this prohibition, this Isur, the Korban Pesach, from non-Jews entering, because we don't always have the power. Okay, even though Beit HaMikdash is there, we have Korban Pesach, but our power is limited. Okay, both in terms of information and in terms of our ability to follow things up. And nevertheless, we have the advantage. Okay, we have the advantage of the wisdom, which is both. It's not only the wisdom of halakha, of knowing the halachot, but it's also the wisdom of understanding people well enough to be able to set this trap and protect Yerushalayim from goyim who try to enter. Okay, that is the issue of Korban Pesach. What about other korbanot? So regarding other korbanot, we have a story which is, I think, even more famous than this one. The story of Kamsa about Kamsa. Okay, and I think the part of this, like the story of Kamsa about Kamsa, is well known, but I think mainly it's well known for other issues, which and not for the issue, not so much for the issue of korbanot coming from Goyim. Okay, usually the story of Kamsa about Kamsa is quoted in the context of Sinat Chinam, of how Jews treat each other. Okay, that is usually the issue, but really that is only the first half of the story. The second half of the story has to do with the way Jews relate to korbanot coming from non-Jews. Okay, now before we read the story, I want to. But we should notice that, you see, in the story that we read before in Pesachim, so in a sense, the harmony between Jews, the Jews in Eretz Israel, in Yerushalayim, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera in Netzivim, okay, the respect, the harmony was such that it enabled them to relate to non-Jews the way they actually should. Okay, they were able to use this communication, this secret communication between Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and the Jews in Yerushalayim to treat the Goyim the way they should be treated in the context of Korban Pesach. Now, in the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa, in a sense, the opposite happens. The discord between the Jews brings a situation where they are not able to treat Goyim the way Goyim should be treated. Okay, a trap is set in the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa, but the trap is not a trap set for the non-Jew; it's a trap set for the Jews. Okay, and in a sense, it's parallel to the story of Pesachim, but there's in some senses it's opposite. Okay, now let's go into the story itself and see how it happens in this story. Again, here also it's heavy in Aramaic, so I'll translate as we go on. Okay. Okay, it's the Gemara in Gittin, which is in the context of many stories, many agadatot about the destruction of Yerushalayim, of Beit HaMikdash. Okay, and the title of the story is Kamsa u'Bar Kamsa Charuv Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was destroyed, Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. These are two people with very similar names. Okay, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and the story relating to these two people is the one of the reasons or one of the causes of the destruction of Yerushalayim. Okay, what's the story? There was there was a person, Derachane Kamsa, who had a friend, a close friend named Kamsa, Uba'al Devave, and his enemy, his hater almost, the person that he hated, despised, Ba'al Devave, Bar Kamsa. Okay, so you have these two people, two opposite relationships, okay, one with Kamsa and one with Bar Kamsa. Avad Seudata, and he made a feast one day. He had a feast. He had some reason to have a Seuda for all of his friends. Okay, Amar le B'Shamei, and he said to his servant, Zil, go, Aitili Kamsa, bring Kamsa, my friend, and invite him. Go and invite him to this Seuda that I'm holding. Azal, so his servant in fact went. And presumably by mistake, his servant invited Baal Kamsa instead of Kamsa. Okay, so he invited his enemy, Ata. So he came. Baal Kamsa came to the Seuda. Sorry, I made a mistake. Ashket and Ata, in other words, not the Baal Kamsa came. Ata, in other words, the owner of the Seuda, the person who made the Seuda, he came to his Seuda, to this party that he was holding. And he found Baal Kamsa, his enemy, sitting in the Seuda. Amarle, and then he said to him, Michdei, he said to him, let us see. Ahu Gavra, this person, meaning you, Baal Kamsa, Baal Devava is the enemy, the Ahu Gavra, of this person, meaning of myself. Okay, you, Baal Kamsa, you're my enemy. My baitacha, meaning what are you doing here? Why are you here? Get out of here. Okay, kum puk, get up and get out. Kum puk. That's what he said to his enemy, to Baal Kamsa, during the party. Amar le, so Baal Kamsa said to him, O'il v'atai, since I came, since I'm already here, Shav kam, let go, let me stay. What do you care? V'yahivna lach damei. Won't cost you any money, okay? And presumably the reason he's pleading is because it was a big bizayon. It was a big how do you say bizayon in English? It was a big
Embarrassment.
Embarrassment for, thank you. Okay, embarrassment for to be thrown out of the party. Okay, so I'll pay for what I'm eating. No. So the Balabai, the person who's making this Seuda, says no, I won't accept the money. Get out of here. So then Baal Kamsa said, I'll pay you Dmei Palga B'Seudatech. I'll pay you half of the value of this whole party. I'll pay you half of your expenses for the whole party. He says no. So then Baal Kamsa says to him, I'll pay you the full expenses of this whole party that you're holding. Okay, I'll pay you everything. And again, he refuses, says no. Get out of here, and presumably he won't budge. Baal Kamsa simply sits there and won't move. So then the owner of the Seuda, Nakte biyadei, he takes him by his arm, okay, holds on to him, the ukmei, and forces him up, the afke, and physically throws him out of the Seuda. Okay. Up to here, this is the first half of the story, which has to do simply with the relationship between the Jews. And then the result of this was that Baal Kamsa said, since the Chachamim were sitting there in this party, they were there, they were present there, and they didn't get up and defend me in any way. Shma mina, I understand from this that they're happy with what happened. Okay, if they were ready for this to happen in their presence, presumably, from their point of view, everything is fine. Okay, so I have to find a way to punish all the Jews. Okay, so here we have the moment where the inner Jew, the argument between the Jews, okay, the embarrassment, the injury, okay, that he suffered, it will now explode outside of the Jewish nation. Okay, he's ready to desert all of the Jews, okay, and to go to the Goyim to find some way of getting justice for what happened, okay? And it's all because the Chachamim were there, because the leaders were there, the spiritual leaders, okay, they were there, didn't say anything, so they deserve punishment. So what will I do? Ezil, I will go. Eichul behu kurza bei malka. Eichul behu kurza means not exactly literally, okay, but the meaning of it is I will go and how would you say tattletale? Okay, I will go and lehalshin. I will go and in some way say bad things about them. Bei malka, to the king. The king meaning to the Roman Empire. Okay, I'll find some way to blacken their face. Okay, I'll say bad things about the Jews to the Romans. Azal, and in fact, Balkamsa went. Amar le Caesar, and he went to the Roman king, to the Caesar, and he went and said to him, Mardu b'cha Yehudai. The Jews are rebelling against you, have rebelled against you. Now, in fact, if this is the story, that's nothing of the sort happened. Okay, it was simply he suffered an injury at the hands of the leaders of the Jewish people. Okay, and he's making it into a rebellion against the Roman Empire. Mardu b'cha Yehudai. The Jews have rebelled. Amar le mi yemar. So the Caesar says, who said? Who told you? Prove it to me. Amar le. So Bar Kamsa says, I'll prove it to you. How will I prove it to you? Shadar lehu korbana. Send a korban. Send with me. Give me the sacrifice that you are sending to Yerushalayim. Anyone? Are you hearing me? Am I back on? Okay. Okay, so we see here that the issue of a korban from a goyim could sometimes be not only a personal issue versus a specific individual non-Jew who brings the korban. It could also be a political issue. Okay, when it's played out on a more on a larger scale. Okay, so when the Caesar sends the korban, then it could be actually dangerous. It could be a sign of rebellion. Okay, so he's sending the korban. Azal, and he went. Shadar biyadei, the Caesar went and sent in his hands, in the hands of Bar Kamsa, he sent egla tilta. Egla tilta means a calf, very praiseworthy. Okay, the best born calf, egla tilta, as a korban, to bring as a korban to on the mizbeach. Okay, all that is fine. We know korbanot from goyim can be sacrificed, right? But here, Bar Kamsa uses the issue of mumim to create a trap. Okay, but how did the Ka'ate, while he was bringing it on the way, he did the following. How did the Ka'ate, Shada beimuma beniv sfatayim. He created a mum, an imperfection. Okay, artificially, he cut the behemah very gently. A very tiny mum, a blemish. Shada beimuma beniv sfatayim, on the lips. Okay, the Amrelander, those who say that he did it bedukin sheba'ain, which is in the eye. Okay, clearly it's a very delicate mum. Okay, the Gemara itself says, duchta, it's a place in the body of the behemah, the ledidan have a muma, that for us, for Jews, it's considered a mum, it's considered a deformity which doesn't allow you to bring it as a korban. But for non-Jews, lav mumahu. For non-Jews, it's not considered a deformity. From their point of view, it's fine. You can bring that as a korban, okay? But we Jews do not bring this as a korban. Okay, now here's the trap. If we will sacrifice it, so that's it's prohibited. We're not allowed to do that, right? And it's prohibited even for korbanot from goyim. In other words, this is the commandment which creates the equality of Jews and non-Jews, right? That non-Jews also cannot bring such a korban. Okay, but if we don't bring it as a korban, this non-Jew, since he's not part of our Torah, of our halacha, he doesn't know this. Okay, how can we communicate to him the truth? Here we also have the gap of information, right? We saw it in the story of Netzivin and Yerushalayim, right? That the non-Jew in Netzivin is saying something, and we have no way to communicate that to Yerushalayim. Now here we have the opposite, right? The Jews in Yerushalayim are doing a certain thing, which has a certain meaning, but there's no way to communicate that to the Kesar. Okay, there's no way to communicate it to him. And this gap is being used by Bar Kamsa to trap the Jews. Okay, you see, right? Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera found a way to bridge the gap in order to trap the non-Jew who's trying to bring a korban to participate in Korban Pesach. Here it's the opposite. Here Bar Kamsa is using this gap of information to trap the Jews in Yerushalayim in a paradoxical situation. There's no way out of it. Okay. And here, that's the way the story, we all know the way the story ends, right? Savur Rabbanan, the Chachamim at first thought, the Keruve, to bring it as a korban, to sacrifice it, Mishum Shlom Malchut, in order to retain the peace with the Malchut. You see, Shalom, the word Shalom, which we had also in the story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and Netzivin, right? Shalom Alecha Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, right? So here also, we're trying to, in some way, keep Shlom Malchut. Amar lo Rabbi Zachariah ben Avkula, some of the Chachamim there said to them, you can't do that, because then Yomru, people might say, Baalei Mumim, Krevin legabe Mizbeach, people might say that you're allowed to bring korbanot, which are not perfect, which have a mum, and we know that that's not allowed. Okay, what's the other option? Savur lemiktele, so they thought of killing Bar Kamsa, the loleze v'lema, that he shouldn't go and again give the information to the Malchut that we didn't bring his korban. Again, Amar lo Rabbi Zachariah, Rabbi Zachariah said you can't do that either. Why? Yomru, because then people might say, Metil mum bekodshi miharek. People might say that the punishment for cutting this delicate cut in a behemah, which is a korban, the punishment for that is death penalty, and that's not true either. Okay, so what can we do? There's nothing we can do. That's what Rabbi Zachariah ben Avkula said. There's nothing we can do. So we're trapped. And that is what happened. Okay, they were trapped. They didn't do anything. Namely, they didn't bring the korban, okay, on the one hand, because of the moon. On the other hand, they didn't find a way to convey the message to the Kesar that the reason they're doing it is not because they are rebelling or disrespectful towards this non-Jewish king, but rather because the opposite is true. It's because of their respect to non-Jews. They found no way to bring this message, this information to the Kesar, and they weren't able to kill this Bar Kamsa for what he did. Okay, and therefore the message went back to the Kesar that it was an act of rebellion. Okay, here we have a case where the discord between the Jews, okay, because we have this machloket between Bar Kamsa and the person who made the Seudah and that whole issue, and also it's also the machloket between the Chachamim. That is what created a trap for the Jews who weren't able, therefore they weren't able to relate in a precise way the truth about their relationships to the non-Jews. Okay, in other words, the question of whether we're able to express what we really feel towards the non-Jews depends upon, not so much upon our relationship with them, rather it depends very much upon the inner relationship between the Jews themselves. Okay, and the machlokot between us influence the way we're able to relate to them. Okay, so this is the second story. I think I'll sort of to sum up. Okay, the the the, the halacha as we saw it in the psukim of the Torah is that korban pesach cannot be brought from goyim, or goyim cannot participate in korban pesach, cannot eat from the korban pesach. On the other hand, all other korbanot can be accepted from goyim, and if they send their korbanot to Beit Hamikdash, we treat them just as we treat a korban brought from a Jew. Okay. Now, in the two stories that we saw in Chazal, we saw how difficult it might be, certainly in times of stress. Okay, in times of destruction, in times of great distance between the Jews and the diaspora and Beit Hamikdash. Okay, in difficult times, it can become difficult to keep these commandments and prohibitions in a precise way. And whether or not we're able to do that will depend especially upon the quality of the relationships between the Jews themselves. Okay, I think that's how I would sum it up. If you have any questions, since no one of you broke in during the shiur, so we have a few minutes left. Any remarks or questions? I'll ask you. I'm curious. I'm sure the story of Kansa of Balkanza many of you knew already. The story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera in Netzivim, is that a story you've come upon already, or is it new to you? You've heard of it, Robin.
I heard it once. I don't remember the context, but I heard it. I didn't read it. I didn't learn it inside, but I'd heard the story.
Yeah.
But very relevant.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think it's also interesting, not that this is the central issue of the shiur, but then in both stories, the way when we don't have sort of a central state and the communications, the way we have them, the way wisdom is used, and it can be used for good and for bad in different ways, and the way people might trap each other, like this issue of Yerushalayim is way so far away. Okay, and how can we convey messages secretly, and how can we, and on the other hand, how sometimes things can be misinterpreted. Okay, that I think is part of the issue as well, and maybe it's also a metaphor for our relationship to non-Jews. Okay, how the distance is there, how difficult it might be to communicate what we really mean, or the way we actually are relating towards them.
It's very interesting you say that, because one of the, look, obviously one of the effects of Corona right now on Israel is the fact that we don't have these thousands of Christians coming in every year, and seeing that, we aren't as bad as CNN makes us out to be. And in a way that might be, again, the thing about it, once upon a time, and they love to congregate around Sukkot time, which was a time that we used to give the korbanot in honor of the 70 nations and stuff like that. They come in for the Tzadat Yerushalayim and the Chagigot around, again, Christian groups were very aware of our holidays and would like to come into Israel around our holiday time as well as their own. And that's all missing now. So, and I'm wondering how that is going to affect. In other words, so to speak, we're not letting them bring their korbanot right now because they can't even come in and do their tour in Israel, which is kind of like in today's equivalent.
Similar to what?
So I'm wondering how that's going to affect our relationship with them in the next year.
Yeah.
So
that's very interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I always thought that Christians come on their holidays, and sometimes it coincides with ours.
But when they come to Sukkot, it Dafka doesn't, which is interesting. The large numbers that come around our holiday time, again, our Chagim, not Pesach, because Pesach might coincide with Easter, but the ones that come around then, and they come, it's that's for us, so they can come and see what we do. And again, I know a little bit about that because we would host with a program called Shabbat of a Lifetime. We would host groups in our home. Friday night, we'd have groups and all kinds, and sometimes they would be friendly, wanting to know more Christian groups. And again, right now that has all been put on hold for the last year and a half. So Just interesting, interesting thought.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Very interesting. Okay.
anyway, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for your shiur.
בסדר. Thank you. תודה לכולכם. And
Bye.
הלוואי, we should
Thank you.
actually physically meet next year.
Oh. Bye. Thank you.
בסדר. להתראות.
להתראות.